Hello and welcome to the 2015-16 Lodge Grants Kickoff webinar. My name is Sarah Louderman and I am a Programs Assistant in the Lodge Grants Office at the Elks National Foundation. Also in the Lodge Grants Office is Programs Assistant Jocelyn Moya and Senior Programs Associate Mary Morgan. Together, the three of us manage the Lodge Grants, and we are here almost every Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 4:30 Central Time. So if you ever have any questions about grants, please give us a call. We are happy to provide program information and assistance. Just to note that this is not the original live webinar that was recorded on June 11th. We had some issues with the first recording, so this is a second recording. So since this webinar is not live, we will not need to go through this webinar information, but I do want to just note that our phone number is on this page in case you ever need it. It is 773-755-4730. So we will get started with some exciting news for the 2015-16 fiscal year. The CIP Turns 10 this year. The Community Investments Program was launched in July of 2005, so we will be celebrating our 10th birthday this year. The CIP has grown from a $3,500 or $350,000 program to the Foundation's largest program at $9.77 million annually. To commemorate the CIP's 10th birthday, the ENF will be celebrating all year with stories, reflections, features, and giveaways. To follow the action all year, use and search for the hashtag CIP Turns 10 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just a quick note for those of you unfamiliar with how to use hashtags. If you wish to post something that is relevant to the CIP's 10th birthday, include that hashtag so that anyone searching for posts about the birthday can see it. On the other hand, if you wanted to see all of the 10th birthday posts, you would simply type hashtag CIP Turns 10 into the search bar on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram to view all posts that include that hashtag. You can also click on a hashtag to view all the relevant posts. Another way to stay up to date is by visiting the CIP's birthday webpage at elks.org/enf/community/cipturns10.cfm. Also this year we will be celebrating the CIP's 10th birthday in Indianapolis at the Elks National Convention. So if you will be at National Convention, be sure to stop by the birthday party on Tuesday, July 7th from 2:30 to 3:30 in the Indiana Convention Center. We'd love to see you. And one last note about the CIP's 10th birthday is that we recently mailed out the annual mailing that has all of the information about the Lodge Grants. And in there we included a birthday hat. So if you'd like to celebrate with us, put on that birthday hat and take a picture and post it on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram with the hashtag CIPTurns10. Moving on to some updates for the 2015-16 year for Lodge Grants. So we have allocated $9.77 million for the Community Investments Program this year, which includes an increase in the Promise Grant and the Gratitude Grant. So Promise Grants this year will be worth $2,500 instead of the original $2,000 as they were last year. Every lodge in which more than 15% of its members donated to the ENF in the 2014-15 year will be eligible for a bonus of $500 when it applies for a gratitude grant. So that means that lodges that 15% of their membership donated last fiscal year, when they apply for the gratitude grant this year, they'll have an extra bonus $500. One important thing to note about that is that the bonus is based off of the previous fiscal year, but the per capita total is always based off of the current fiscal year. Another update for this year is that there will be 180 Freedom Grants, And also applications will go online July 1st and are due August 17th at noon. It's important to note that these dates have changed from previous years. They used to only be available in August, and now they will sync up with the other Lodge grant dates. Freedom grants also will be handled by our office. So if you do have any questions about Freedom grants, please contact us. So these are the grants that we will be covering today. The Impact Grant, which is available for up to $10,000. The Gratitude Grant, which we touched on briefly on the previous slide. The Beacon Grant, which is $2,000 available to all lodges for an ongoing Elks-led project. The Promise Grant, which is available for $2,500 this year for youth activities. And the Freedom Grant, which is a competitive grant available for $2,000 to serve veterans in need and/or active duty military members. So here are some grant basics. All grants should serve people in need. They must be charitable in nature, and they should be local. Grant guidelines do state that lodges cannot use grants to fund scholarships, hoop shoot contests, youth awards nights, poster or essay contests, fundraisers, appreciation events, or general community events. So when we say something should be charitable, what does that mean? We define charitable by the IRS guidelines of charitable, which are on this slide: to relieve the poor, distressed, or underprivileged, advance education or science, obviously not through scholarships because that is one restriction, lessen the burdens of government, lessen neighborhood tensions, eliminate prejudice and discrimination, and combat juvenile delinquency. So the primary goal of ENF grants is to help people in need. And these are not categories that we have defined. These are categories that the IRS deems charitable. And as a 501c3 organization, the ENF is required to follow these categories. These categories are very broad, so they shouldn't be restrictive, but it's still good to keep these in mind when the lodge is thinking about and planning a grant project. We'd also like lodges to think about using all grants for new projects if possible. The CIP has grown a lot since it began, and the intention of the program is to help Elks expand their charitable activities rather than financially assisting lodges or funding projects that have been ongoing for some time. So all of the applications for lodge grants are online. If you go to CLMS, you can view the ENF hotline, which includes links to all of the applications, and will keep you up to date on when applications are eligible or open and when your lodge is eligible for these grants. So 2016 Impact Grant applications will be available on June 17th. 2015-16 Beacon, Freedom, Gratitude, and Promise Grant applications will be available starting July 1st. Secretaries can apply for these grants. They automatically will have access to the grant applications. But if the secretary is busy or unable to be involved with the grants, the lodge can appoint a grant coordinator. So in CLMS, the lodge secretary under the staff tab can add a grant coordinator. There is no limit to how many grant coordinators the lodge can have. So if the lodge has one person involved with the Beacon Grant and another individual involved with the Promise Grant, you could appoint 2 grant coordinators, one to handle each of those grants. those individuals will not have access to CLMS. Instead, they will be able to access the grant applications through the ENF website. So grant coordinators should be computer savvy, and they should ideally be involved with the grant program. So one update that started last year was the ENF defining the veterans guidelines. So we added guidelines for how lodges serving veterans should use lodge grants. So any lodge grant that is focused on serving veterans or military members should be focused on serving people in need. And here are the 5 areas of increased need that a lodge grant project should focus on. So employment, homelessness and housing, military families, health, and educational support are the 5 categories that your lodge grant project must fall under if it is serving veterans or military members. So it's clear that Elks have a passion for this cause, and to direct this passion, we have provided these updated guidelines. So these guidelines debuted last year and should definitely be considered when building any grant project serving veterans. So speaking of veterans and military members, the Freedom Grant, which is a grant specifically to serve veterans and military members, will be handled by the ENF office this year. There will be 180 Freedom Grants available for $2,000 each. These are competitive grants, and we strongly encourage Elk involvement in these projects. So the applications will be online starting July 1st, and they are due by August 17th at noon Central Time. There's no benefit to submitting the application early, but please submit it on time. And we review all of these applications together since they're competitive. It's not on a first come, first served basis like the Promise Grant. So moving on to the Gratitude Grant, here are some basics. So these are $2,000 grants available to all lodges that meet the GER's per member goal for giving to the ENF. Applications become available when your lodge reaches the goal starting July 1st. So some lodges meet the goal early in the year, in June, for example, and when July 1st rolls around, they will be eligible to apply as soon as the application opens. For other lodges that have not met the per member giving goal quite yet, their applications will open up as soon as that goal is met. So new this year, as we mentioned earlier, lodges where more than 15% of their members donated to the ENF last fiscal year will be eligible for a $500 bonus. The online CIP participation report will show which lodges are eligible for the $500 bonus. This update has not been added as of yet, and today is June 15th, but in probably a week or so, this information will be added to the CIP participation report online. We will also be including a link to this information in this monthly CIP Club e-newsletter. So if you are not subscribed to CIP Club, definitely subscribe to keep up to date. But we have a link on this page for the reports and standings page if you wish to view that report. So that is elks.org/enf/reports.cfm. You can view your lodge's current per capita that year, and you can also view the CIP participation report on that webpage. So these applications will be online until May 31st of 2016, and the project must be completed by July 31st of 2016. Gratitude grants are flexible, and they can be used for a lot of different projects, and they can be used for straight donations, but we definitely encourage involvement when possible. So here are a few examples of donations that your lodge could possibly turn into a more active project. So providing opportunities for your lodge members to get actively involved and have hands-on direct interaction can make a huge impact. And it's also an opportunity for your lodge to show the community Elks doing active projects, and it's great publicity, and it's a great way to make the community more aware of your lodge. Moving on to Beacon grants, here are the basics. So these are $2,000 grants available to every lodge, whether they have met the ENF per member goal for giving or not. These applications are available to all lodges online starting July 1st, 2015, and are due by March 31st, 2016. And projects similarly to the gratitude grant must be completed by July 31st of 2016. So Beacon grant applications have stricter requirements for the category they must fall under. So the lodge can have many different types of projects, but the Beacon grant does have a specific requirements about how this project must be built. So the first year the lodge applies, the Beacon grant must be new. So all grants are intended to allow the lodge to expand its charitable efforts, but the Beacon grant specifically cannot be used for a project that the lodge has previously funded on its own. All funds must be used for a new project or to expand an existing project. So this note about Beacon grant projects being new is for lodges that have not applied for the Beacon grant before. If your lodge has received a Beacon grant in the past, we hope you will use the Beacon grant to continue that project. So moving on to Beacon grants being ongoing, kind of ties into that. So Beacon grant projects cannot be one-time events. They need to be ongoing at least annually. So your lodge should have a plan when they apply for how often this project will occur. Depending on the project, consider trying to make the program happen quarterly, monthly, or maybe even weekly. Some of the best projects we see happen more than just once a year. Beacon grant projects also must be Elk-led. Involvement is one of the key components with a Beacon grant project. If your lodge's application does not include significant involvement, we will not be able to approve the application. So make sure that the lodge is in charge of the grant funds and there's a great deal of opportunities for members to get involved, and be sure to clearly state all of that information on your lodge's application. And lastly, Beacon grants must be an activity. So it cannot be a straight donation of funds or supplies. It can also not be split between multiple projects. It should be focused on one active project that the lodge is involved with greatly. So here are a few examples of items that do not qualify for Beacon grant funds and ways that your lodge could possibly turn that project into a qualifying program. So next we will go over the Promise Grant. So this year Promise Grants are available for $2,500 rather than $2,000. There are a limited amount of Promise Grants available, so there are only 500 Promise Grants available to the first 500 lodges that pledge to hold an eligible event that builds the character and competence of local youth, regardless of ENF giving. So your lodge does not need to meet the per member goal for giving to the ENF to apply for the Promise Grant. These applications go online July 1st, and they go very quickly, so we recommend applying in July or August if your lodge is interested in receiving these grant funds. Last year, we awarded all 500 Promise Grants by mid-September. Promise Grant projects must be completed by July 31st of 2016. And Promise Grant projects should be active youth projects. So here are the 5 categories that Promise Grant projects should fall under. They should provide youth with a safe place, promote healthy living, offer support from caring adults, emphasize the importance of education, or encourage community service. So these categories should be considered in addition to the IRS guidelines that we touched on previously. So be sure to keep all of this in mind when planning your lodge's grant project. Whenever possible, your lodge should make an effort to reach out to youth in need in the community for these projects. So when we say a Promise Grant must be an activity, it means that it requires active Elk involvement. So this is an opportunity for Elks to serve as role models to youth, and there should be direct face-to-face interaction. And here are a few examples of items that do not qualify for the Promise Grant, and some ideas of how to turn those ideas into more active projects. So lastly, we will be covering the Impact Grant. So the Impact Grant is a competitive grant of up to $10,000 to make a real and lasting difference in a lodge community. So Impact Grants must be Elks developed, Elks driven, and have a great deal of Elk involvement. These applications go online June 17th and are due September 4th at 12 p.m. noon Central Time. The recipients will be announced in late October, and these grant funds will be for the 2016 calendar year. Here are a few Impact Grant application tips. So, like I mentioned on the previous slide, Elk involvement is key with these projects. It's one of the most important things that the Impact Grant Committee looks for when reviewing these projects, so be sure to include a lot of information about this and have a good idea of how many volunteers there will be, what the volunteers will be doing, and how often. So a strong plan is really important with figuring that out. So a good idea is just a start. So we need to have all of the details of the project and know exactly how grant funds will be used, how many Elks will be involved with the project, how often will the program occur. These are all very important details. We see a lot of applications that seem like great starts and great ideas, but without all of the key information and a strong plan, we cannot approve those applications. So be sure to start early, contact us with questions. We are happy to help, and we can provide guidance and tips. We can go over your application before it's submitted and give you some feedback. Similarly to the Freedom Grant, there is no benefit to submitting the application as early as they go online. It's best to take your time with the application, contact us with your questions, and just submit on time whenever the application is ready. So we have a lot of information, tips, resources, guidance tools online. You can find all of that at elks.org/ENF/community. I would also recommend signing up for CIP Club, which is our monthly e-newsletter. That's a great way to stay informed on what's going on with lodge grants, keep a calendar, and we include a lot of information about updated resources and dates and tips for publicity and getting members involved. So sign up for CIP Club if you are not already registered. And if you do want to sign up for CIP Club, you can just send us an email and we'll add you to our list. And if you have specific questions or need some help with your lodge's project or guidance, please call us or email us. Our number again is 773-755-4730. You can also reach us at lodgegrants@elks.org and enfprograms@elks.org. So the enfprograms@elks.org is probably the email address that most people are familiar with. We also added the lodgegrants@elks.org address since we will be handling the Freedom Grants moving forward. Both of these addresses should work, so feel free to use either of them to contact us. So that's all to get started for the 2015-16 fiscal year. We look forward to reading your grant applications, and thanks for listening today.